Stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name's Dave Miller. I am the unpleasant blind guy. Newtonian physics tells us that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And some of that science has certainly been used to apply to the science of sociology as well. When we look back on 2017, we can definitely see examples of the action-reaction principle. To go back, by 2015, the progressive left thought that they had things pretty much under control. All they had to do was use fear phraseology, such as race or racism, and they could see that many people would be cowed and, not wanting to be perceived as racists, get back into their little holes exactly where the progressive left wants them. Globalists and their Mohammedan allies were well on track towards world domination. Yes, there was going to be a vote to come up in the United Kingdom to separate from Europe, but the Remain campaign was well in hand, and all of the elites there thought that the UK would be safely ensconced in Europe forever. Here in the United States of America, Hillary Clinton was poised to finally be coronated as President of the United States. It was her turn, and all of the experts said that's what would happen. Then 2016 came along. Suddenly, the elites found themselves in trouble. First, in the UK, they were shocked to learn that more than 17 million of their own people, including a significant number of people from their own Labour Party, voted for Brexit. They voted to separate themselves from a larger globalist concern, the European Union. And here in the United States of America, much to her horror and to the horror of the progressive left, Hillary Rodham Clinton did not become president. Then came 2017 and the reaction to the bad news. The progressive left were beside themselves and sent out their violent actors, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and associated groups, to riot in the streets and assault people who were simply defending free speech rights. Because you see, folks, that's how they lost. Good people used the internet and social media to get their message across in 2016, and there was a quiet but effective response that spanned the Atlantic Ocean. And in 2017, the progressive left was going to see to it that good people paid for their decisions. Increasing pressure on organizations like the English Defence League in the United Kingdom, the actual government, under supposedly conservative prime ministers, made sure that the EDL's message of civil liberty was drowned in a sea of PR firm-generated propaganda. Don't believe me? Look back into the headlines of 2017 and you will find that the UK Home Office hired the PR firm Saatchi to counter messaging not only from organizations like the EDL, but also from places like Breitbart UK. In the United States of America, the media allies of the elites and the shadow government that rose to oppose policies of President Donald Trump were working just as hard to tarnish the image and reputation of people who did not support Hillary Clinton for president, labeling them white supremacists. You see, guys, racism is an excellent tool as far as the progressive left's mind masters are concerned. All they have to do is accuse someone of racism, and not only are many of them silenced, but they're demoralized as well because they know it isn't true. To the progressive left, though, the job gets done. People shut up, stay home, and let the progressive left do whatever they want. But as we learned in 2017, there are reactions even to that. One of them occurred about a month ago and stirred up a transatlantic controversy, as you'll hear in this audio from Paul Joseph Watson.
Trump retweeting Britain First was dumb. I said it was dumb. But you know what was way dumber? The hysterical reaction that followed. As Brendan O'Neill highlights, Britain First is a monster of the left's own making. Get off your high horse. If you create a chilling atmosphere where questioning an unreformed 7th century belief system is tantamount to a hate crime, if you create an atmosphere where questioning the practical logic of importing 300,000 people into a country every single year makes you a racist, if you create an atmosphere where moderate critics of Islam are intimidated and bullied into silence, where committing a politically incorrect thought crime puts you at risk of public shaming and losing your career, you leave a vacuum for extremist voices to fill the void. Why do you think Britain First is exploding in popularity? Because you silenced nearly everyone else. You censored and cowed moderate voices into submission. You put Muslim reformists like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Majid Nawaz on a list. You painted a giant target on their back. What did you think would happen when you ring-fenced Islam from criticism and told the public they couldn't express legitimate concerns? Britain First is what happened, and you're entirely to blame for it. We had a Labour MP retweeting calls for child victims of Muslim rape gangs to shut their mouths for the good of diversity. Yeah, that actually happened. Where was your outrage over that retweet? It was non-existent because you're odious hypocrites. Now that same Labour MP calls Donald Trump's retweets disgusting. Yeah, you're not on very solid ground there, are you? Where was your outrage over teenage rape victims being taken to court for racism while their abusers escaped investigation for years? Where was your outrage over police being told it's not practical to investigate actual crimes while they have plenty of time to investigate offensive tweets? Where was your outrage about actual ISIS jihadists being allowed to re-enter the UK? Where was your outrage over ISIS jihadists being given taxpayer-funded houses and therapy? Better watch those offensive Facebook posts. Oh, but if you're an actual terrorist, come on in. Sadiq Khan's outraged. Is he outraged over soaring violent crime levels in London? Is he outraged about acid attacks and stabbings becoming commonplace? Is he outraged about the 30,000 Islamist extremists currently roaming the UK? No, he's outraged over Trump's dumb retweets. We've had 3 terror attacks in London this year alone, and what is he giving speeches about? London needing a range of toilets to reflect gender diversity. If only Sadiq Khan was as outraged about the crime and terror that plagues the streets of London as he is non-gender diverse toilets or Donald Trump's friggin' retweets. And then there's Theresa May. The EU is trying to sabotage the democratic mandate she was entrusted with by the British people. They're demanding £50 billion in ransom. And what's Theresa May doing when she's not busy caving into them? Getting offended over Trump's retweets. No, stop. And verified Twitter libtards, save me the sanctimonious grandstanding. Oh, you're so progressive because you oppose extremist groups like Britain First, while you simultaneously support Antifa, a domestic extremist group listed by the Department of Homeland Security as a terror organization, an extremist group that violently attacks people for having a different opinion. And if you're against extremist groups, why do you support Black Lives Matter, a group whose extremist message has inspired actual terrorists, a group whose ideological guru is a convicted cop-killing fugitive terrorist? Strange that, isn't it? Your vehement opposition to extremist groups suddenly disappears when those extremist groups happen to be on the far left.
Dear Twitter, by tweeting anti-Muslim conspiracy theory videos which are fake, real Donald Trump has violated your terms of service by jeopardizing the safety of 7 million American Muslims, and you should suspend his account. Signed, The World.
Jeopardizing the safety of 7 million American Muslims? What hysterical nonsense. Forget suspending them. Twitter openly gives platforms to and verifies actual Islamist extremist groups. Where's your outrage over that?
I asked the Home Secretary this morning if the US President, or indeed Twitter, have committed a crime for inciting racial religious hatred. The Home Sec says she will not comment on individual cases. I think he has committed a crime.
Give me a break. The leader of your party called Hamas and Hezbollah are his friends. The Labour Party is full of actual anti-Semites. Your colleague tells child rape victims to shut up for the good of diversity. Oh yeah, and Islam? Still not a race. Delete your account. Newsflash. Trump retweeting 5-year-old videos didn't kill anybody. Nobody got hurt. 411 people got hurt in the UK this year alone as a result of Islamic terror attacks. 34 of those people are dead. And yet, what are you all infinitely more angry about? Trump's frigging retweets. Get some damn perspective. And if you actually want to oppose extremism, stop amplifying Britain first by silencing everyone else.
Now, what many of you in the United States of America don't know about Britain First is that it is an organization that is more of a huckstering concern than it is a civil rights concern. Oh, they do talk about the issues of the threat of Islam to the civilized world, but they also do a lot of money collecting, and that does go into the pockets of their leaders. The point, though, to the whole controversy was that President Trump retweeted some old videos of theirs. Now, Britain First has a habit of taking some of their older videos and glomming news stories onto them and then putting them out again. All of that said, there are fewer and fewer avenues for even the average citizen, let alone the President of the United States, to express, as Mr. Watson said, legitimate concerns, not only about Islam, but about things like socialism and other issues. The progressive left have done their best to silence opposition. They didn't do it enough, they felt, in 2015 to prevent 2016. So they tried it again in 2017 to prevent what must be done in 2018. The government of the UK and the shadow government here in the United States of America have allied with powerful forces who are in charge of social media to see to it that the course of normalization in both the United States of America and the UK is turned back to their shared goal of globalization. One of the new outlets for social media has been the service called Gab. I'm on Gab as Agador, and while not a whole lot of other people are, they have become a threat to those who wish to silence voices so that they can forward their agenda. Give a listen to this by Wild Smile, published on September the 16th, 2017, entitled Gab Files Lawsuit Against Google.
Gab has now filed a lawsuit against Google for their removal of their app from Google's Play Store. They have also been recently called a hate speech app after Google had designated them in violation of their hate speech policies. This has caught on through their detractors on social media who insist that it is a white supremacist app. And by the way, the man who founded Gab is Asian. Their claim is that because many of their users hold alt-right or white nationalist perspectives.
Stopping the audio here just for a moment to bring up what I think is a legitimate fact. The term alt-right. I don't really think that anyone really understands what the term alt-right is or means. This is a term that came up in 2017 and became popular, and it seems to mean whatever the person using it at the time indicates that it means. So guys, I'm going to encourage you not to use this term because, quite honestly, in my opinion, it's meaningless. And also, guys, did you notice the references to white supremacy and hate speech? Google, Facebook, and Twitter have amplified their attacks on patriots and basically anyone who holds right of center views by labeling their posts as hate speech and indications of white supremacy. Again, the tool of race baiting being used by the progressive left. Let's continue on with this great audio.
That this means that this is the perspective held by people from that company. Classic guilt by association. From the Medium article, link is below by the way, according to Gab's attorney, Mark Randazza, Google's conduct is a straightforward violation of the antitrust laws. Google Play and Android have monopoly power in the App Store market, and Google's apps, YouTube and Google Plus, compete directly against Gab. Google's intimate partnership with Twitter, which also competes against Gab, makes Google's control of all Android apps available through the Play Store a serious restraint of trade issue. Regardless of Google's pretextual justification for removing Gab, the effect is that they use their monopoly power in the App Store to block an upstart competitor in the social media app market, to the detriment of millions of consumers who value free speech. Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, and all of those other sites also have these same people with the same ideas. Does that mean that they're also a white supremacist app? The difference between Gab and these other companies, or at least the major difference, is the length they're willing to go to censor ideas that are deemed harmful by whoever's in charge, be it a sensitive and fragile person or a computer AI. I support alt-tech, and all of these companies that are starting up to represent the values that consumers appreciate, with Alphabet, Google's parent company, and Apple having a stranglehold on the tech industry. It is important to introduce competition as soon as possible, as competition will drive innovation and economic evolution. I have Gab, but I have not used it but once or twice. Much like YouTube and Twitter, that is where the people are, and if you want to participate in social media, there has to be enough people there to make it social. Gab is still also a little clunky on mobile, but I like the idea of a free speech Twitter. I'm also aware that their web hosting service forced them to take down a post a week or more ago, but to my knowledge, Gab has already began to look for a different domain. Just through the firing of one employee over at Google because he had an incorrect assumption about gender, an assumption that women and men are biologically different, Google has created a new wave of relevance for companies that would have likely never succeeded or even caught the public's eye otherwise. Vid.me, BitChute, Minds, Dailymotion, and others, and of course everyone's favorite Pornhub, have all grown to become a legitimate competitor with the Goliath that is Google. Pale Moon, Mozilla, Opera, and even Microsoft Edge are all becoming more popular by each day as more and more people are trusting Google less and less. They could have kept their monopoly, and everyone was happy to allow them the luxury of no competition because their business practices and their products were good enough to stand on their own. It was not until there began this strange witch hunt against people who think differently that people decided it was time to make a stand against them. And look, I don't want to see Google and YouTube fail, at least not entirely. In fact, I want competition to drive them to do better, to listen to more people, and to bring them the things that they want. I know this sounds simple and straightforward, but I can't imagine anyone demanded YouTube heroes. Like with many things in the past, I just wanted to enjoy the platform without the shenanigans. I want my subscription feed to come through intact without having some videos not show up. I want my suggestions section to actually match what I watch without having a third party procure content for me that they think is more appropriate. I want videos to remain open, not limited, and existing to bring discussion at all times. And I'm even against people being able to manually shut down the comment section. As much as they say that YouTube comment sections are cancer, they are still worth looking at when watching a video so that there can be a bit of context to the discussion being had regarding the video. It's also important to have responses to the claims being made in said video.
Now this bit I have to answer because I do have comments shut off on my YouTube videos. You can get The Unpleasant Blind Guy at The Unpleasant Blind Guy page on YouTube, and please subscribe to it as well. But understand that I don't have comments turned on. Now why don't I, when everything that the young man has said about those comments is basically true? The answer is basically time. I do the Unpleasant Blind Guy show, and I try to research it well. I also help with the English Defense League radio show, and I try to research that well. That takes up a good deal of time. I also like to do things off the internet. Big surprise. And I don't have time to sift through comment after comment answering each one, especially when most of them, let's be honest, would be, you suck, you're a racist, you're a thisist, you're a thatist, you're a thisophobe, you're a thatophobe. The discourse that the young man is talking about here would be pretty shallow. And while I'm willing to listen to and engage in good, genuine discussion, I'm simply not prepared to spend a large amount of time in what comes off as a urinating contest. If people want to respond to my videos, to my audios, things of that nature, they can do so with videos or audios of their own. That's what social media is all about. They can make their own podcast to respond to my views. In the meantime, I'll keep bringing you Unpleasant Blind Guy episodes, and I'll keep the comments turned off, because for me, researching and making good quality shows is more important. So let's continue with this young man's audio here.
I want for videos and content creators to not have to worry about having their videos and channels arbitrarily taken down with clear and spelled out rules. So we all want the same thing. We all want to use a platform to communicate with that does not show preferential treatment based on political affiliation, for lack of a better term. The more ethical Google, YouTube, Apple, Twitter, Facebook, and others act, the more people will begin to trust them again. Their hubris through lack of challenge has made them arrogant, seemingly beyond repair. I hope Gab wins, not just for the platform to improve, but because Google needs to lose a little in order for them to be winners again.
Now that audio is an excellent snapshot of the attitudes being held by the social media giants, not only towards legitimate competition, but towards the user as well. Mark Zuckerberg, for instance, is a well-known progressive leftist who is sympathetic to the cause of the Islamic Caliphate. Twitter actually has an official account for ISIS. So you can see from this, people, how those who are trying to control information in the new media are working to control our speech, and they will brook no interference from a newcomer like Gab. Even giants in this new age 21st century industry are becoming embroiled with organizations like Google for content control. That's exemplified in this article by the Associated Press, dated December the 6th, 2017, with the title, Google Blocks YouTube on Amazon Devices in Escalating Feud. San Francisco. Google is pulling its popular YouTube video service from Amazon's Fire TV and Echo Show devices in an escalating feud that has caught consumers in the crossfire. Google says the decision to block YouTube is retaliation for Amazon's refusal to sell some Google products that compete with Amazon gadgets. That includes Google's Chromecast streaming device, an alternative to Fire TV, and an internet-connected speaker called Home, which is trying to catch up to Amazon's market-leading Echo. Amazon's high-end Echo Show has a screen that can display video. Google is hoping to pressure Amazon into selling Google's products. Amazon also has rankled Google by declining to sell an internet-connected thermostat made by Nest, which is owned by Alphabet Incorporated, like Google. Amazon didn't immediately respond to a request for comment Tuesday. So as you can see, people, industry giants in the playground, and you're caught in the middle. Will you be able to see content? And what content will you be allowed to see? What content will you be allowed to publish? In the increasingly Orwellian world that is the 2000 teens, where is free speech? It certainly isn't on the college campuses in the United States of America, as illustrated by this article by Nikita Vladimirov, investigative reporter for campusreform.org, published December the 5th, 2017, with the title, UConn to start vetting speakers, quote, that may present a risk, end quote. The University of Connecticut is planning to vet future speakers and all their traveling companions following a heated altercation during a campus event last week. According to the CT Post, the policy change was announced Monday by UConn President Susan Herbst, who explained that the new protocols will be operating before the start of the next semester. The announcement comes just days after the arrest of a conservative provocateur, Lucian Windrich, who was charged with breach of peace after attempting to forcibly retrieve his lecture notes from a female protester who had snatched them from the podium. Now guys, I'll stop here to say that it's hardly being a provocateur to try and retrieve one's property. That individual should not have been charged with breach of peace. The protester who took the materials should have been charged with theft. But again, this is what is happening on our campuses today, and this is the government response to it. Not to defend the victim, but to support the violator. To continue with this article, Winrich, who is a White House correspondent for conservative website Gateway Pundit, was invited to deliver a lecture titled "It's Okay to be White," where protesters greeted him with waves of anti-fascist chants and accused him of being a Nazi. Now I'll stop here again, guys, because Nazi is another one of those great words that the progressive left uses to try and silence opposition. If you oppose anything that's left of center, you're labeled a Nazi. That despite the fact that most of the people who use that word don't even understand what a Nazi was, or what Nazism is, or what Nazis represented. They must not understand it because the techniques they use, such as snatching lecture notes from a lectern, are exactly the sort of things that the brown shirts used to do in the 1930s. I'll continue with this article. According to a recent report by The Blaze, the woman who stole the speaker's notes was also later identified as an employee of a local community college. We will not allow events or other programming to take place at UConn if the university determines that an individual involved represents a danger to our community and the safety of our campuses, Herbst maintained. Speech and safety do not conflict with each other. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop here again because this is the classic excuse now that the progressive left have developed over the past 2 years. What they're saying, and what they've actually said in as many words, is that speech is the equivalent of violence. And what this does is that it gives them an excuse to commit actual acts of violence against the speaker. And what in turn that does is to give people like this Herbst individual the excuse they need to shut down free speech, which he is doing with this policy. To continue with the article, the policy change also follows a critical report published by the Huffington Post that identified one of the speaker's companions as a frequent attendee of neo-Nazi gatherings, including a white supremacist march in Charlottesville. Now I'll stop here to ask why it is that the University of Connecticut considers an obviously biased publication to be worth trusting enough to make policy changes. And if the Huffington Post also reported, as the Southern Poverty Law Center did, that the organizer of that march in Charlottesville had a year earlier been a member in good standing of Occupy Wall Street. Rather doubt that they did, but as you can see, people, the leftist press are as much invested in stopping the free speech of the people as are the shadow governments, Mohammedans, globalists, academia, the entire global socialist hegemony. Now let's continue with the article. While last week's speaker had no criminal history or record of disruption, the university was disturbed to later learn that an individual traveling with him, whose identity was not known in advance by the university, has at least one arrest for a violent offense in addition to other very troubling aspects of his record, the official said. University spokesperson Stephanie Wrights assured the CT Post that the new review guidelines are administrative in nature and have nothing to do with content. Okay, guys. Yeah. I'll continue with the article. I had to stop and kind of chuckle there. Here we go. explaining that in the case of the Wintridge event, only his traveling companion would have been barred from attending because of his violent past. Now I'll stop here to ask, so what is the University of Connecticut going to do from now on? Are they going to require background checks for all of their speakers? Maybe give HuffPo a buzz for the lowdown? Or are they only going to require background checks for speakers with views that they don't agree with? One has to wonder, as I continue with the article. University spokesman Stephanie Wrights told Campus Reform that the new review guidelines are administrative in nature and have nothing to do with content, stressing that the school continues to hold free speech among its principal values. And if you believe that, folks, I've got this Rolex I'll sell you for $5. To continue with the article. It's critical to emphasize that these changes are not about finding reasons to cancel programming, she continued. Rather, it is about making sure that student groups and the university are both aware of what a particular speaker or program may entail, so we can plan properly, which could include taking steps to mitigate possible risks that fall short of canceling a speaker. Right, and that's why they're going to, quote-unquote, vet speakers from now on. Now, to me, that sounds like they're looking for excuses to stop speakers from coming. Certainly speakers with views that might upset their students. What? Provide security so that students understand that if they approach the speaker and try to steal their property or do harm to their person, they're going to be arrested? Oh no, can't do that. Better to make sure that the speaker either has insufficient personal security or doesn't show up at all. Think this is just an isolated incident? Campus Reform also has a related story on this page with the headline, Students Call Free Speech Violent While Disrupting Lecture. You see what I mean, folks? And I hadn't even seen that headline when I said what I did before. Well, I've got news for the hegemony. I see 2018 as the year the good people take their speech back. People, we cannot allow these enemies of the people, these individuals who call other people Nazis while acting like Nazis themselves, to take away our freedom to speak. So to everyone out there who might be going to a demonstration, or just who might be in public speaking, I just have this advice. Don't give ground. Don't let them steal your property. And if they attack, defend yourselves. If cities, counties, or states refuse to provide adequate protection for people exercising their right to freely speak, there should be provision for federal criminal charges to be filed against the responsible public officials for refusal to protect the speaker's civil right to speak. Now, how can we resolve this problem on our college campuses? I see the solution to this is very simple. I think that a law should be passed, and I usually am not one of these people that says there ought to be yet another law, that says that any institution of higher learning that receives federal money must allow unfettered freedom of speech, and that they must provide adequate security for all speakers. If they do not, bye-bye federal funds. People, we made a lot of progress in 2016, both in the United States and in the UK. We should not, cannot, and will not allow the enemies of the people to drive us into a dark time of barbarity by shutting us up. Let's remember what John F. Kennedy said. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And now it's on to the Awesome American segment. Yes. And this time's Awesome American is a member of the Greatest Generation, a man whose story you'll hear about in this report by John Briggs, updated October the 12th, 2017, from KPLC TV, Channel 7, Lake Charles, Louisiana.
A World War II veteran who came to Lake Charles and helped pioneer radiology is our hometown hero. KPLC's John Bridges has the story of Dr. Elwyn Cavan.
Elwyn Cavan had just graduated from LSU when he was called up to serve in the Army shortly after Pearl Harbor. After a year or so of training, he found himself in the Pacific War, helping the Allies regain control of the Philippines from Japan.
And we didn't get much opposition from the Japanese. They had moved back to Manila. And but after a period of fighting, we were able to take Manila back.
The 97-year-old Cavan says he remembers a Japanese attack when a shell exploded, severely wounding a buddy next to him.
Blood was foaming from his mouth and his nose, and he had a big hole in his chest. And I thought, well, gee whiz, I won't see him again. They rushed up the medics. Our medics did a wonderful job. They rushed up and took him off, but 30 days later, he was back with us.
Cavan, then a captain in the Army, started moving his unit toward Japan for a major invasion.
I was in charge of getting our troops on our ships when we were notified that the bombs had been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we were able to move right on in and land in Japan.
After the war, he graduated from medical school and came to Lake Charles, helping to start the radiology unit at St. Patrick Hospital. And beside Dr. Cavan, all along the way, is his wife, Ollie. They'll celebrate 70 years of marriage this fall. In Lake Charles, John Bridges, KPLC 7 News.
The Cavans will celebrate their milestone anniversary on November 15th. 70 years. Wow. Happy anniversary to the Cavans.
Dr. Elwyn Cavan exemplifies that greatest generation who not only fought off a relentless enemy, but then returned home to serve their communities by remaking themselves to help better the prosperous America that they defended. And that's what makes him, and so many others of that greatest generation, awesome Americans. And that's it for this time. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye.
The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.